Hello everyone. Today I'm going to explain to you how to write pedagogical analysis. This format is specifically for the subject English. This is for the pedagogy of teaching English, and it will be required for your theory and practicum in B.Ed semesters 2 and 3. So let me begin with the basic template. Uh, In pedagogical analysis, we begin by writing the topic or the name of the chapter and the name of the author. And then we first write the concept analysis. In case of other subjects, we usually see that the concept analysis is not there. They start directly with the content analysis. But in our subject, we start with the concept analysis. So we write this way: concept analysis, a general overview, where we first enlist the basic concepts, the outline of the content, the author's style of writing, everything, and then the activities to be done based on the exercises given at the back, or you may construct them on your own. And then we move on to the content analysis, wherein we make a table and then we note on the left hand side the unit means the name of the chapter is noted. And the subunits, basically in English, we have three subunits, that is reading comprehension. Second is language study and use, which basically consists of grammar and vocabulary. And finally, we have further activities, which has speaking, communication skills, writing skills, etc. So, under that, if you see this format is there in case of uh, blossoms. In bliss or realm, you don't have this format. In blossoms, most of the chapters they have this format: let's start, let's share, let's read, let's do with the activities, then let's learn, let's do again with the activities, then again let's learn, let's do with activities. So this way we usually divide the subunits according to the same pattern. But when it comes to bliss or realm, we change the pattern, or we do not stick to this let's start, let's share pattern. We change it a little bit. So now the next step is constructing the instructional objectives in behavioral terms. We do that as per revised Bloom's taxonomy. And there also we have basically three subunits where we put in the subunits of like reading comprehension, then grammar and vocabulary, and further activities. Then we note down the expressive objectives. I'll explain that when I explain in details. Then we have the table of specification with the objective numbers, which we also call blueprint. And then we come to the teaching strategies. Here also we note the teaching strategies based on reading comprehension, grammar and vocabulary, and writing skills. So further activities, that is. So under reading comprehension, in all the subunits, this is the usual pattern. That is, first you have to write learner-centered activities. Then you have to write down the equipment, stages, and the purpose. Then you have to note or describe and display the board work. Then you have to put in some probing questions in pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading stages. Then you have to give the worksheet. So then you move on to the next subunit. Same thing, same pattern, learner-centered activities. Okay. If you have any theoretical things to learn under Let's Learn for grammar, then you can put it under Let's Learn. And then you have individual activities, group activities, whatever. Same thing, then equipment, stages, and purpose. Use of Blackboard, that is display and description, probing questions, worksheet. Then again, further activities, that is the subunit, third subunit. This is learner centered activities. Then again, equipment, stages, and purpose, board work, probing questions, worksheet. Finally, we move on to the next segment, that is the criterion reference test, where we frame an achievement test based on these three subunits: reading comprehension, grammar and vocabulary, and writing skills. Then we put another table of specification. This is basically with the question numbers and the marks allotted. Earlier table of specification had only the objective numbers. Then after that, we put in the answer key. And finally, we write down the reflection. When you write your practicum, then you have to start off initially with some description of what is pedagogical analysis, what are the usual steps of pedagogical analysis, and then the importance of pedagogical analysis. These are the general things that you need to begin with in your practicum, and then you move on to writing the basic pedagogical analysis, the main body of the analysis. Okay, so this I have described now. This is the basic template. This is a basic outline. So now I'll move on to the description of the pedagogical analysis in details, how to write it in details. Here I have taken a chapter from um, the book Realm of class 11. This is the new textbook from class 11, and the chapter is An Astrologer's Day by R.K. Narayan. So I have just written, just as an example, I have written this as a sample so that you can have a fair idea as to how to write. So we begin with the concept analysis, a general overview, where we first describe the basic concepts we given in the lesson. So the first, we give the conceptual ideas as to what this lesson is about. Then we move on to the outline of the content. Of course, you have to paste the entire text on the left hand side of your practicum copy, and here you have to write down the outline of the content, that is in a gist. In you have to write down what the story is about. Then you have to mention the author's style of writing, as it is seen through the lesson. It can be a poem, it can be prose, whatever you take. Then you have to take up the grammar and vocabulary that you can teach through the lesson. Then we move on to the next segment, that is B. This was A, concepts. Then we move on to B, that is activities. Let's do. Here we note down the activities based on reading, then based on extension of reading, language study, listening and speaking, and writing. Okay. Here I have given these because in case of blossoms, you have this, the division of questions given at the back are based on this. So, but in Realm, the number of questions given are limited, so you construct your own questions. So basically, extension of reading comes only when you have a second unit, subunit, I mean unit through the lesson. That is, it goes on to let's continue to another section where many times you see the chapters are divided into small segments. Okay, little bit of portion is given, then questions are given. Then we move on to the next little bit of the chapter again is given, and then questions are given. When your structure of the chapter is like that, then you write it in this way, extension of reading. But if your chapter is uh, designed in one at a go, the entire story at a go, then you don't put in this extension of reading section. Okay, so here activities, you wrote down the activities based on reading. These you can note down mainly from your from the back questions, or you can construct your own activities depending upon the lesson and the class that you are taking. So language study, listening and speaking, activities based on writing. Okay, then we move on to the content analysis. In this segment, what we do is we basically write down, or we note down uh, uh, the lessons, and in a tabular form, the various subunits. Okay, and then the number of periods that might be required for teaching each subunit. The unit is the chapter, this is the subunit. Okay, so you have, let's share in this way also. You can arrange it, or reading comprehension in general. You know how to you introduce the lesson, how you contextualize. First you give the author's information, and then you contextualize and introduce the lesson with a few questions. You note that, and then you let's read, the text is read in the class, and then the activities based on reading comprehension are done. Okay, then you have subunit 2, that is whatever related to grammar and vocabulary you need to teach. You record the activities and the theory portions that you need to teach from there. For example, you have taken the vocabulary part up. So the vocabulary might include synonyms, antonyms, or maybe word meanings, make sentences, these activities based on vocabulary. And if you are teaching grammar, for example, I have taken up three basic topics of grammar, that is active passive voice and narration and present perfect tense, to be taught through the lesson. So you have to write down under let's learn these what theory. You have to give them some theoretical knowledge based on that conceptual knowledge, and then you have to do the practice of the activities based on the grammar that you have taught. On the right hand side, you keep noting down the number of periods that you will be requiring. And then the subunit 3 comes, where you have the further activities, where again, let's learn here. The writing skill activity you are teaching the students is paragraph writing and story writing. So you teach them that theoretically, and then you make them practice how to write a paragraph and how to compose a story. Finally, you give evaluation. You take you evaluate the students based on a criterion reference test, and you diagnose wherever the deficits have are there in the students, and then you reteach it once again. So totally, you require this many, tentatively this many periods. So you record the total number of periods that you have required for the lesson. Now we come to instructional objectives in behavioral terms. This will be recorded as per revised Bloom's taxonomy. This entire segment will be divided again into three subunits. Remember this, in English we have subunits divided based on reading comprehension, grammar and vocabulary, and writing skill, basically. Okay. So one more thing I need to mention, that is in case of bliss and realm, if you don't have this let's share, let's learn, no problem, you can introduce that yourself also, as to how you want to introduce the lesson, how you want contextualization to be done. You can write it accordingly. Okay. Now we move on next to the instructional objectives. So the students will be able to make sure that your action verbs are as per the norms of writing the objectives based on revised Bloom's taxonomy. And on the right hand side, you note down the dimensions, and you divide them under three segments: subunit 1, subunit 2, and subunit 3. And then you put them under this taxonomic table. This looks something like this. This table is not exactly based on these objectives, so I've just given you a sample table to see, so that you know that how you write a taxonomic table that is based on revised Bloom's taxonomy. We call that table of specification or blueprint, which has on the left hand side the knowledge dimension with factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, and metacognitive knowledge. And on the right hand side, we have the cognitive dimension, or cognitive process dimension, which has remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So you all have already learned how to construct objectives in learning design. The same way you have to construct your objectives, and you have to write down the objective numbers only in this table of specification. Now, in case of our subject specifically, we have this called expressive objectives. That is, many a times uh, expressive objectives cannot be recorded in the table of specification. It is something maybe related to the values, or some emotional response, something some affective dimension related thing, or personal understanding that the child develops based on the lesson, okay, or value development. So based on that, we write down our expressive objectives. Okay. So in this lesson, we have recorded that the students will be able to express their personal understanding and emotional response to the story by reflecting on the themes such as guilt, identity, deception, and fate, and relate them to real life experience or moral dilemmas. Now we move on to the teaching strategies. Teaching strategies will comprise of three segments, as I said earlier, that is reading comprehension. Then the second will be your grammar and vocabulary. This is the grammar and vocabulary. And finally, we have the writing skill. Okay, that is further activities. So now we move on, we move back again to the first one. That is um, uh, teaching strategies are the reading comprehension. We have to note down some learner centered teaching activities. You can do it in the patterns of let's start, let's share, let's read. based on blossoms, or else you can just move on and write down individual activity or pair work or group work or whatever you give this to the students to do while doing reading comprehension. In this section, you have to note down whatever equipments TLM you're using in the pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading stages, and what purpose they are serving. You have to paste the pictures of the TLM, the charts or any model or any realia that you're using. The pictorial illustrations have to be pasted here. Then board work has to be again pasted here. This is the usual format for writing board work, for doing the board work. That is class, date, subject. In case of prose, you write English prose. In case of poem, you write in the subject English poem. Grammar, you write grammar. Okay, topic, you write an author in case of prose and poem or drama. And on the left hand side, you write the word meanings or maybe the key points if you're teaching grammar or anything else, composition or whatever. And then on the right hand side, you write incidental writing. Incidental writing means while explaining impromptu, you may be required to write down certain things to explain the lesson conceptually. You may have to draw certain illustrations. So whatever you do it under incidental writing. Now we come to the probing questions. As you know, probing questions is when you are asking thought-provoking questions, something which they have to reflect upon critically and then they have to answer. They will not be straightforward questions. Okay, so you have to ask probing questions. Three, that is one in the pre-reading stage, while reading stage, and one in the post-reading stage. And then you have to give them a worksheet. You have to prepare this worksheet and you have to paste it. This is the worksheet for reading comprehension. Now we move on to subunit 2, that is grammar and vocabulary. Same thing again, you have to give learner-centered activities. Let's Learn will give you the theoretical idea, will describe the theoretical portions of grammar to be taught, that is active passive voice, direct indirect speech, and present perfect tense here, what I have chosen. Then we have the group activity, that is the teacher will conduct a quiz and the students will work in groups. I've given them a quiz to be done by the teacher. Then you can even have a pair activity. This can be as per your imagination. Whatever you want to do in the class, you record that. Then equipment, stages, and purpose. Whatever equipments or TLM you're using, you put them under the left-hand side column. In the middle, the pre-reading, while reading, and post-reading, that is stages. And the purpose to be recorded on the right-hand side. Then again, here also, you have to paste whatever TLM you're using. You have to paste the pictures of the TLM. Then the board work to be done. Here you don't write word meanings because you're doing grammar. So you write the key points to be taught and the incidental writing. If you're teaching them with examples or whatever, you write on the incidental writing. Then we come to the probing questions. Here I have given one probing question from active passive voice, one from direct indirect speech, and one from past and present perfect tense. Then again, the worksheet is to be given based on grammar and vocabulary. Okay, so this is the worksheet on grammar and vocabulary. Then we have the third subunit, that is further activities. Here again, we note down learner-centered activities, that is pair work, group work, or whatever. You can have any other strategy to be used, learner-centered activity. You can use any other, apart from this, you can use any other activity. You please, brainstorming or whatever you want, you can do. Then equipment, stages, and purpose in the pre-writing, while writing, post-writing stages. Because you're teaching writing skill, you have to record them and paste the pictures, and then you have to do the board work here and paste the board work and just write a little bit of description as to what you've given, you described, you have mentioned on the board, and give them the display your board work. Then the probing questions. Here I have basically taught two types of writing skills, that is one on paragraph writing and one on story writing. So I've given two probing questions, one for each. Then here is the worksheet based on one paragraph writing and one story writing. Okay. Now we move on to the next segment, that is the evaluation part, that is criterion reference test. Here also I have given them a worksheet. Now there's something very important I need to tell you. When you are giving the students worksheet, which the students are to be given to solve and return back, in that portion you don't write down these objective, that is dimensions. You write down the dimensions only when you have to, when you are writing the questions under criterion reference test in your copy or in your file. Worksheet which is given or pasted separately, if you are writing the same questions and giving them in the form of a worksheet, you paste that separately. That will not mention these dimensions, because the dimensions are meant for the teacher, not for the students. So the dimensions will be only recorded in the teacher's portion of the work. That is where the teacher is recording the criterion reference test to be given to the students, and but the worksheet with the students receive, that will not record the objectives, that is the objective dimensions. Here, this is remembering factual knowledge, understanding conceptual knowledge. You usually write it in short form like this. Okay, so here also you divide it. I have given 100 marks paper, but you need not have. You can have a 50 marks paper just for a sample, or maybe 30 marks, whatever you please. So it will be divided into three segments, that is reading comprehension. Then you have vocabulary, and then I have given grammar separately, vocabulary separately, and then I have given the writing skill part, writing skill 30 marks. This is how I have divided the lesson. So you can allot less marks also to this. It depends. Here in the worksheets in the previous section, you will learn a centered activities there. In teaching strategies, there you don't have marks, but in the criterion reference test you have to give the marks, because those marks have to be recorded here in this table of specification, taxonomic table that you construct once again, where you record only the question numbers and the marks allotted and the total percentage that you are giving. That has to be a balanced percentage. So make sure that your questions are distributed evenly and all the dimensions are covered while you are setting the question paper. So, in this segment, there is another important thing that I need to mention. You have to construct the questions exactly based on the objectives, the instructional objectives that you had set earlier. See here, you do that simultaneously. Okay, under reading comprehension, whatever objective you set, you have to give them a correlated question over there. Okay, so that will help you to have a balanced taxonomic table, and the taxonomic table for the objectives and for the questions will tally only then. Okay, so keep them related. Okay, don't use them, give them separately, keep them related. Now we move on to the final segment, that is the answer key, where you just record the answers of all the questions that you have given in 30 marks, under 30 marks, and under grammar and vocabulary and writing skill and everything. And finally, you write your reflection. Now, what is reflection? Reflection is basically where you note down what you've learned while working on the practicum or while doing the practicum. So, what you've learned through the practicum. So, this is more or less the overall structure of writing the pedagogical analysis. I hope you have understood the lesson. Thank you so much.